American Comics Agency, starting with rescuing Iron Man. Chapter 41. At the Continental Hotel, an Asian man entered the Continental Hotel. As soon as he entered, he was greeted by a black man. "Hello, my name is Karen. Are you a novice killer?" The black man asked with a smile. "I'm not a killer. By the way, can I sit here for a moment?" The Asian man asked, looking at the chair at the front desk. The black man was a little confused, but nodded. Then the Asian man sat down and looked at the Continental Hotel where people were coming and going. Suddenly he pulled out a gun. When the black man saw this, he immediately came behind him. "Guest, I think you should understand the rules of the Continental Hotel, which is that killing is not allowed." "I know, but I came here this time to challenge the high table. Please give you 10 minutes to leave here." As he said this, Li Qingyu pointed his gun directly at the ceiling. The sound of gunfire attracted the attention of everyone present, and the black man immediately called the hotel manager, the top leader of the Continental Hotel. I saw him holding a wine glass and saying with a smile, "It seems that you are the boss of Marvel Studios. I have no ill intentions towards you. I know, but the high table behind you has a lot of objections to me, and I can't find other leaders, so I can only look to you. I understand, the people who can speak, they are here." Everyone looked at the door. A woman with short hair came to the hotel manager with elegant steps. She took out a black gold coin and said, "I am the arbiter sent by the high table, Mr. Lee, we want to do something with you." "A deal? What deal?" "If you survive the remainder of the battle, we will revoke the bounty." "Oh, what about the battlefield?" "It's here. Winston will lift the restraining order in half an hour, and the high table will be responsible for all losses." The short-haired woman said coldly. "Okay, Lord Judge." Following Winston's order, alarms sounded throughout the Continental Hotel, and a large number of guests began to evacuate in an orderly manner. Li Qingyu found a seat to sit down, while Karen and Winston came to his office. Three sides of the office are made of thick steel plates, especially the door, which is specially designed for the vault. Unless a large number of bombs are used, the door cannot be opened at all. The two of them were in the office, observing Li Qingyu's every move with the help of cameras. "Karen, do you think he's going to win?" "I don't know. I've only met the high table's special service team once. He has little chance of winning by himself." "That's right. No matter he wins or loses, the people on the bounty order are dead, because I think the high table has already sent people to assassinate the 3 people on the bounty order." Winston took a sip of his wine, said, "Really, manager? Of course, if they didn't send someone there, it wouldn't be the high table I know." Suddenly, the power to the entire Continental Hotel was cut off, and the originally bright hall became dark for a while, but the emergency lights were soon turned on, and the dim green light made the atmosphere suddenly become scary. Then several buses stopped outside the Continental Hotel, and a large number of special service teams got off the buses. They put on night vision goggles and entered the hotel. But as soon as the first person stepped in, a bullet penetrated directly. His bulletproof helmet killed it. This sudden attack made the special service team subconsciously counterattack in the direction of the bullet. But when they reacted, they found that there was no enemy at the location where they shot them. "Hello, are you looking for me?" Li Qingyu's voice came from the other side. They turned their heads to look, but they still couldn't see where Li Qingyu was. For this reason, they dispersed to look for traces of Li Qingyu, and Li Qingyu waited for them to disperse. Everyone only heard gunfire from time to time, but could not see Li Qingyu at all. Soon the team only survived for 5 minutes before they were all massacred by Li Qingyu. The 2 people in the office, looking at Li Qingyu's ghostly marksmanship, couldn't help but sigh, "Manager, now I feel that their chances of winning at the high table are 0. Do you think it's possible for us to learn such a marksmanship?" "I don't know about the manager," Karen responded softly. "In fact, they are now convinced that the high table has lost. After all, Li Qingyu can kill all these special agents without showing up, unless the high table is willing to use a large number of lives to consume Li Qingyu's bullets, but every special agent here is trained to do so. Nearly $1 million have been spent. They are all very precious combat power beings, and it is impossible for the high table to allow them to make fearless sacrifices." So when 2 teams were sacrificed, but Li Qingyu's face was not even seen, the judge had to restart the water and electricity in the Continental Hotel, and walked in again, and Li Qingyu walked out. I won, didn't I? Yes, you won, the judge said helplessly. After all, through the surveillance camera, she also saw the scene just now. They died without even seeing Li Qingyu's figure. Especially the gun in Li Qingyu's hand could easily penetrate the bulletproof helmet they developed. This is the most shocking thing. They were surprised. By the way, may I know who is putting a bounty on the Black family? Sorry, the high table will not betray any guest information, the judge said coldly. It's up to you. By the way, those people sent to Hell's Kitchen should also be taken back. The judge ignored Li Qingyu, waved his windbreaker and left, but he still said when leaving, I have ordered a retreat. Oh, this commission is really terrible. Just when Li Qingyu was about to leave, Winston and Karen suddenly appeared. You two, is something wrong? Mr. Li, are you wondering if we can learn your marksmanship? Well, actually you just need to study more physics, Li Qingyu said with a smile. The two looked at each other and smiled bitterly. By the way, this is my business card. If you need anything, you can contact me. After saying that, Li Qingyu left the Continental Hotel and rushed back to the office. Unexpectedly, he felt a throbbing in his heart, as if something big was going to happen in the office. And his feeling was not wrong. At this time, Marvel Studios was going through a tough battle. Richard, Walter, and Tony provided long-range support, while Constantine attacked at close range. They were constantly repelling the incoming Special Service team, but I don't know when it started. This group of Special Service teams began to change, and their speed became faster. His eyes gradually turned red. What's going on? Tony immediately noticed something was wrong and asked. The power of hell is the power of Mephisto. As soon as Constantine shouted this name, all the Special Service teams stopped, one of them stood up, and a deep voice slowly sounded. Constantine, I finally meet you. The body of the Special Service team in front of me rippled, and then he turned into an old man in a white suit. Mephisto, how dare you show up? Constantine shouted. If you want to wait for Ancient One to come and save you, it's a pity that she can't come. Mephisto said with a smile. You attacked the teacher. It's impossible. You can't be the teacher's opponent. It's Dormammu, and you cooperated. That's right, we cooperated. Now Ji Yi has no time to care about me. Constantine smiled coldly and said, so what, and I don't think you can really use your own power, because once you use it, you will be discovered by the temple and you will be expelled. Even if I can't use my own power, they are enough. Mephisto opened his hands, and the Special Service team behind him took a step forward. His eyes filled with red light told everyone that they had been inked. Fisto's power took control. It's enough that you can't take action. Constantine shook his hands, and the rings of Ragador appeared in his hands. These are two small magic shields, which can be regarded as the starting move of all magicians. Devil, I don't know if my bullets can cause harm to them. Richard whispered, and the next moment he fired directly. The bullet hit the body of the Special Service member, but the bullet could not break through the defense and only made him retreat. One step forward. Tom, Jerry, it's your turn. Richard shouted loudly, and the next second there was a sound of breaking through the air. Everyone looked up and saw Tom with 3 Magatama Sharingan eyes, holding a fan and AA katana. The current Tom was completely different from the usual Tom, and his powerful power made everyone present unable to look directly at him. Not only him, but Jerry also fell from the sky. He was dressed in a similar manner, but compared to Tom, there was a giant wooden mouse under Jerry's feet. Is this Tom and Jerry? Yes, the teacher said that this is their ninja profession. I heard that when they grow to a certain level, they can change their profession into pirates and evolve more abilities. Richard explained. And Tony looked at the two of them, landed next to Richard and whispered, can you give them to me to study then? But who knew that as soon as he finished speaking, Tom turned around and used the Sharingan to send Tony into the illusion. Tony came out of the illusion 3 seconds later. He looked at Tom in horror. He never thought of Tom's ability. It's actually so strong. Okay, I won't talk nonsense to you. Let's send Constantine to hell. Following Mephisto's order, the Special Service teams that had merged with demonic power immediately rushed towards everyone, so fast that everyone could only you can see the afterimage. Walt quickly threw an improved version of NZT to Richard. After Richard swallowed it, although he still couldn't see their figures clearly, he was able to make an early shot through calculation. Walter constantly released killing crows or crow's nests to block the enemy, while Constantine was much more relaxed and directly used them to integrate the newly learned magic. Tony handed over the control of the armor to Jarvis. Jarvis used his powerful computing power to continuously attack the Special Service team. However, after the Special Service team merged with the power of demons, their defense was qualitatively improved. Not only were Richard's upgraded bullets unable to harm them, but even Tony's laser weapon only scratched their skin. "What should I do? My weapons can't hurt them at all," Tony shouted anxiously. "Sir, please look at that child." Jarvis's voice sounded. Tony looked down and saw that Richard was still shooting, even though his bullets couldn't hurt them. According to calculations, the child stopped their attack with the impact of the bullet. "Please see the video, sir." A video appeared in Tony's field of vision. In the video, a task force member was planning to attack Constantine. Richard's bullet directly hit the elbow socket of the task force member. Even though they had the power of demons, their forms were still the same. Human, so the impact of the bullet interrupted his sneak attack, giving Constantine time to fight back. "So that's it, Jarvis is left to you." "Okay, sir, start reducing the energy output and start counterattack." As Jarvis opened his mouth, countless tiny lasers shot out from his palm, and each accurately hit the joints of the task force members. Fortunately, these special team members lost their consciousness, otherwise they would probably be depressed to death. "Where's the T-800? Richard suddenly asked. "I asked him to notify the boss. He should be back soon." "T-800, are you talking about this robot?" Mephisto heard their conversation and flashed to the two of them and asked. At the same time, he took out the T-800 from nowhere, but the T-800 at this time it seems to have entered a downtime state. "What did you do to him?" Richard asked. "I upgraded him. Such a creature should exist for killing, don't you think?" Mephisto showed a sly smile. Richard felt bad and immediately threw Walter down. The next second T-800 opened his eyes, but his eyes were filled with red light, and he walked towards Walter with heavy steps. "Yes, that's it, kill them. T-800, I am your master, and I ask you to stop," Walter shouted. At this time, in the T-800 processor, two different data streams are strangulating each other. One is the blue data stream of his own existence, and the other is the red data stream belonging to the demonic power. These two data streams are constantly the person will be strangled on the ground, and whoever wins will be able to completely control this body. Just as the blue data stream was about to lose, a strange energy submerged into the blue data stream. The originally disadvantaged data stream suddenly expanded and directly swallowed the red data stream. "Protect Walter and destroy the devil." T-800 turned back stiffly and said, then punched Mephisto. Mephisto frowned casually, disappeared back outside in a flash, and T-800 reached out to the two of them. Walter and Richard looked at each other, then stretched out their hands to hold the T-800. As the T-800 exerted force, the two stood up. "T-800, are you okay?" "Richard, I'm fine. Thank you for your concern." After finishing speaking, T-800 also joined the battle. With its powerful body, it directly punched the head of a special service member. Then red energy escaped from the corpse, and this energy was absorbed by T-800. "Walter, have you noticed that the T-800 seems a little different?" "Yes, it seems to have become more intelligent, or more like a human being." Walter looked directly at the T-800 and murmured, "It's not too late for me to come back." Li Qingyu's voice sounded, and everyone looked at him. "Boss, you're back. Teacher, you are back." The two shouted excitedly. Li Qingyu was too lazy to talk nonsense and rushed directly into the battlefield. Using his powerful strength, he quickly ended the group of demon-possessed special service members. The hell energy escaping from their corpses was all absorbed by the T-800. When Mephisto saw this, he didn't waste any time and disappeared. "Are you okay?" Li Qingyu looked at everyone and asked. Everyone shook their heads, indicating that they were fine. "Richard, ask your father to send someone to repair this place." Richard nodded and ran to find Kingpin. "Huh, you're not hurt, Tony, go get something delicious to eat and drink." Li Qingyu asked IG and the others, then turned to Tony. I got it. Jarvis contacted Happy and asked him to send food for 15 people and bring over my collection of wine. Okay sir, Director Happy has been notified. Boss, look at T-800. Is there something wrong with him? Walter asked Li Qingyu. Li Qingyu looked at T-800 and saw that his originally green pupils turned red. Not only that, but his expression also became much softer. Do you know how to change a robot's camp? Li Qingyu suddenly asked. Modify his data. Yes, Mephisto wants to use hell energy to modify the data of T-800 through this method. But the origin of T-800 is not simple. All robots produced from vending machines have only one criterion, and that is to obey the purchaser. Order, this is their only criterion, and the data Mephisto wants to modify has triggered this criterion, so he will definitely fail, and the T-800 also gains the ability to absorb hell's energy. Will this hellish energy have any impact on him? Well, it may make him more human-like, and the alloy skeleton will become harder. The most important thing is that his skin can repair itself. Of course, there may be other enhancement effects, but you need to explore it yourself. I'm not very clear either. Li Qingyu explained. I see. Then he asked T-800 to find a place to sit down, and then Richard walked in. How's it going? Is the outside cleaned up? It's been cleaned up, teacher. Richard replied. Suddenly he felt the sound of breaking the air behind him. He looked back and found that it was Leah. He helplessly opened his hands to welcome Leah's arms. Hey, Ed, let me study that mouse and cat. Yes, as long as you can persuade them. Li Qingyu said nonchalantly. When Tony saw this, he quickly ran to the two children. Tom, Jerry, as long as you cooperate with me in my research, I will give you the latest game console, how about it? The two young men looked at each other and saw the movement in their eyes. Just when Tom was about to agree, Jerry stepped on Tom's foot, causing Tom to jump up and down, covering his foot in pain. Are you not satisfied? Jerry shook his head, then chirped. Although Tony couldn't understand what it said, it happened to understand its meaning. One is not enough, then two. At the same time, I can provide you with many, many delicacies that you have never tasted. If you are not satisfied with this, I will build you a cheese villa, just for you, cheese villa, and build a candy house for Tom. After hearing Tony's conditions, Jerry couldn't help but swallow, and then stretched out his hand towards him. Tony smiled, and reached out to grab Jerry's little hand and shake it. Teacher, is this really okay? Don't worry, he can't come up with anything through research. Li Qingyu said nonchalantly. After everyone chatted for a while, Happy brought a van to the door and served a variety of delicious food and wine, and everyone immediately started eating. With the comfort of delicious food, everyone's emotions were calmed down, and with the blessing of fine wine, everyone gradually became familiar with each other. On the side, T-800 kept looking at them. Suddenly he moved, and he stretched out his hand to grab a roasted chicken leg. T-800, what's wrong with you? You can't eat human food. But T-800 didn't say anything. Instead, he put the chicken leg into his mouth. As he chewed it, he said, so this is what food tastes like. T-800, are you okay? Walter stood up and asked. Walter, I seem to be a little different. T-800 said slowly. Boss, what's wrong with him? Walter looked at Li Qingyu and asked. Li Qingyu frowned and looked at the T-800. Suddenly he heard something and said in surprise, heartbeat. Heartbeat? Walter asked puzzledly. Li Qingyu nodded and said, yes, it's the heartbeat. T-800 should have evolved using the devil's energy. Now he is almost like a human, with internal organs, blood vessels, etc., so he can eat human food. This can't be possible, Tony shouted. If you don't believe it, you can ask Jarvis to scan it. Jarvis, scan it. As the blue scanning light passed over T-800's body, it took a while before Jarvis said, Sir, after scanning, except for the alloy skeleton, battery heart and processor brain, T-800 is similar to humans. Is this considered evolution? Walter asked with a frown. Isn't this evolution? If there were no internal organs, the T-800's weaknesses would only be the neck, processor, and heart. But now that it has internal organs and blood, it has many more weaknesses. Is this considered evolution? Walter explained. I think his evolution is not over yet. After he absorbs a lot of hell energy, he should be able to evolve. Don't worry, Li Qingyu said. T-800, is it possible for you to evolve? It should be true, Walter, don't you like my evolution? If you don't like it, I can degenerate. No, since you can evolve, then evolve. Walter quickly shook his head and said. Okay, Walter. T-800 nodded and said. Okay, I'm sleepy too. You guys pack up the trash. I'm going to bed first. Li Qingyu waved his hand and went back upstairs, but when he turned around, he reminded, what about Tony? If you study them, wait until this commission is over. They are an indispensable fighting force. I know, Tony said and left with happy. Seeing this, IG had no choice but to get up and start cleaning up the garbage on the table. Richard saw this and quickly helped. Then I'm leaving too. I have to learn magic. Constantine also said goodbye, opened the portal and returned to Karmatage. Richard, let me help you. Leah quickly followed Richard to clean up. Dividing line. Hell, Mephisto returned here, where he was sitting on the throne, not knowing what he was thinking, when a demon ran in. Lord Mephisto, the witch heart demon has arrived on Earth. How he ran over, I don't know, but he is indeed on Earth. The demon replied. I understand, go down. As the demon retreated, Mephisto had a seal in his hand and murmured, old friend, it seems I need to use your power. The next day came in a blink of an eye. The weather was sunny and the temperature was pleasant. Li Qingyu came down from the second floor and found Walter and T-800 sitting face to face. What are you doing? Li Qingyu asked, looking at the two of them. Boss, T-800 gave itself a name. Name, what's it? Li Qingyu asked curiously. John Connor. T-800 said without changing his expression. Hearing this name, Li Qingyu almost spit out the water he just drank. What did you say? What happened to the name John Connor? Walt asked in confusion. I will tell you when there is a commission from that world. It can be said that this name has carried out the Terminator's life. Li Qingyu pretended to sigh. Life, Connor, do you really not recognize this name? Walter looked at the T-800 and asked. I really don't know it. I just feel that this name is very, very familiar. T-800 explained. Okay, from now on you will be called John Connor. By the way, now that you have human organs, will you feel pain? Walter asked curiously. Connor shook his head. He didn't know if he felt pain. Hey, don't you know if you just go and try it? Li Qingyu then asked Tom and Jerry to stay at the office, and the three of them came to the shooting range built by Vanessa for Richard, which was not open to the public. The three of them greeted the people at the door and then entered the shooting range. Try the damage to his skin with a sharp weapon first. Li Qingyu said as he took the dagger beside him. Boss, let me do it. Walter said. Li Qingyu handed the dagger directly to Walter. Walter took it, pointed the dagger at Connor's arm and said, if it hurts, you must tell us, understand? Connor nodded, and then Walter slowly pointed the dagger at Connor's arm. What Walter didn't expect was that Connor's skin actually resisted the dagger. Aren't you in pain? Connor shook his head and said, I don't seem to feel pain. Use a gun, Li Qingyu said. Boss, are you sure? Connor, you make your own choice. Li Qingyu knew that Walter didn't want Connor to be injured. After all, Walter was Connor's master. If it was just an ordinary robot, Walter would definitely not have any hesitation. But now that Connor has self-emotion and human organs, Walter's attitude towards him has naturally changed. Walter, believe me, I feel like I'll be fine. Connor looked directly at Walter and said. Walter closed his eyes and nodded. Connor took the pistol from Walter's hand. He pointed the gun directly at his palm and fired. The bullet directly hit his palm and turned into a copper cake. Is your skin so strong? Walter shouted in surprise. My skin seems to be as strong as my alloy skeleton. Let's try this. Li Qingyu held up an RPG from behind. Don't make trouble, boss. Walter shouted quickly, but it was too late. Li Qingyu had already fired the RPG. As the shell hit Connor, Connor flew out until he hit the wall, and the black smoke enveloped Connor. Walter looked at the black smoke and saw a figure standing out of the black smoke. When the black smoke dissipated, Connor walked out naked. There was no damage on his body, only his clothes were destroyed. Joe, put on your clothes quickly. Li Qingyu threw a set of clothes from the storage column, but the clothes were still a bit small for Connor. After all, Connor was 2 meters tall and his muscles were even stronger than Li Qingyu's. The clothes were worn on his body, completely revealing his perfect figure. "Connor, are you okay?" "I'm fine, I feel fine. My skin is as strong as my alloy skeleton. As long as I can continue to increase the strength of my alloy skeleton, my skin will also be strengthened," Connor said. But when Connor finished speaking, he found that Li Qingyu and Walter were looking at him with strange eyes. "What's wrong? Why do you speak so coherently? And you can speak so many words at once. I seem to have evolved again, and there are many more things that I can't understand," Connor said with a puzzled face. Looking at Connor, who was becoming more and more human-like, Li Qingyu grabbed Walter and said, "Well, Connor is yours, so you have to explain him well and don't let him become Skynet who wants to destroy the world. Do you understand?" "What's Skynet?" Li Qingyu roughly told the plot of Terminator 1. When he learned that T-800 was the Terminator sent by Skynet to kill the past saviors, Walter glanced at Connor, and Connor also happened to look at Walter. When he saw Connor's unworldly eyes, Walter nodded. "I will teach him well." Then Walter took Connor back to his apartment and gave him the computer, because without his permission, Connor was not allowed to connect to the internet. After all, everyone knows the ethos on the internet. After all, on the internet no one knows themselves, which leads to some people letting their natures go. Whenever something unsatisfactory happens in their lives, they will go online and scold whoever they catch. Connor cannot learn these things, otherwise his character will be stereotyped. So what Connor showed him was basically some relatively good information, or various technologies, etc. This lasted for about a week, during which time Edgy's husband, Mr. Sirius Black, finally appeared. Not only did he appear, he also explained his job. It turns out that Sirius is a scientist working for the High Table. His research results include but are not limited to the bulletproof materials for the High Table's bulletproof suits. This is also one of his most famous achievements. According to common sense, the High Table should not place a bounty on his relatives for someone like him. Speaking of which, we have to mention the structure of the High Table. The highest leader of the High Table is the Elder, followed by the 12 permanent directors. Behind these 12 permanent directors are usually powerful families. Behind them are the continental hotel managers from each region, and then there are the service stations. These service stations usually provide a variety of services. For example, corpse cleaning appeared in John Wick 1, some LEAs, doctors, tailors, guides, etc. appeared in the second film. And Sirius should belong to the Science and Technology Department, specializing in the development of various technologies that are beneficial to assassination. His power is not great, but it is not low. He should not be hunted down. In the end, it was Sirius who explained to Li Qingyu. After all, he also knew how powerful Li Qingyu was and wanted to make him a friend. It turns out that Sirius improved the bulletproof material to make it 100% bulletproof. What does that mean? Bullets cannot penetrate and the kinetic energy of the bullet can be 100% absorbed, but only bullets with a caliber less than 62 rifle rounds can be 100% bulletproof. It is 100% bulletproof, and bullets with a caliber higher than this can also greatly reduce the impact. Such material can be said to be indispensable for their killers, but just when Sirius was planning to use this material to gain some benefits for himself, a certain permanent director learned the news and immediately wanted to snatch this thing and occupy it. To do so, the permanent director even used his power and a large amount of blood contracts to force Sirius to hand over this technology. Of course Sirius was not willing, but he also knew that he could not compete with them on his own, so he found the permanent director's opponent and joined them. However, the permanent director needed some time to deal with things, so for this Sirius could only find Li Qingyu to take care of IG and the others, and then he and the permanent director defeated the guy who wanted to steal his achievements, and also received a lot of compensation. This was the whole story. After Sirius explained it clearly, he left with IG and the three of them. There was still a little bit of tail left to deal with. After a week of instruction, Connor is now almost the same as a human being. On this day, everyone gathered around the table to have dinner, and suddenly the bulletin board glowed with white light, and then a commission appeared on the bulletin board. "Boss, here comes the entrustment." "What commission?" Li Qingyu asked as he was stuffing rice into his mouth. "Protect Sarah Connor and John Connor, and defeat the T-800 and T-1000 Terminators." The reward is 1,500 points. Walter said, and the further he spoke, the lower his voice became. Haha, I didn't expect to come just after I said this. Let's go. This time our entire office will set off together. The points will be divided between the two of you. What about Tom and Jerry? Ask Tony to pick them up. Didn't he say that he wants to study them both? Then let me inform Tony. Walter said, and then asked Gaia to contact Tony, and asked Tony to take away Tom and Jerry. Then Richard also asked Vanessa to ask for leave for him. After everything was settled, the 4 people accepted the commission, and as the surrounding environment changed, they appeared in Los Angeles in 1984. Boss, where are we going to protect John Connor? Well, the current John Connor has not been born yet, so we need to protect Sarah Connor first and let her successfully give birth to John Connor. Of course, T-800 and T-1000 did not travel through time at the same time, so we need to deal with T-800 first. Let's see how to solve T-1000 later. Lee Qingyu said. A few people nodded, and then they found a phone booth and found out the location of Sarah Connor. Just when Walter wanted to go directly to Sarah Connor, he was rejected by Lee Qingyu. A few people were sitting at a roadside restaurant, and Lee Qingyu told everyone the plot of Terminator 1 and 2. Walter finally understood why Lee Qingyu wanted to stop them. So now we have to wait for those 2 people to finish sleeping together, then go find them, and work with them to eliminate the T-800. Is this what you mean? That's right. However, in order to ensure that everything went according to their plan, they still found Sarah Connor and followed her until she had romance with the rebel Kyle, and then Lee Qingyu and the others appeared in front of them. Especially Kyle, when he saw Connor, he subconsciously shot Connor. The bullet hit him, but it only caused sparks and could not hurt Connor. Hey, calm down, we are here to help you, not to hurt you. Walter said quickly. What about him? He is our robot, not T-800, so don't worry. While several people were talking, the T-800 chased after them and fired at them with a shotgun, but all the bullets were blocked by Connor. Then Connor jumped down and started a close combat with the T-800. The T-800 was no match for the evolved Connor, and was quickly destroyed by Connor. So easily solved. Kyle couldn't imagine that such a powerful T-800 could not last more than a few rounds in Connor's hands. It's so easy. Since the T-800 has been disposed of, we'll leave first. Several people no longer lingered and turned around to leave. When Kyle came back to his senses, he found that several people had completely disappeared. However, the 2 looked at each other and showed happy smiles. They thought that the future had changed, but little did they know that it was because of the body of T-800 that leading to the birth of Skynet. After Lee Qingyu and others left the motel, they noticed a bright light coming from the entrustment paper. Before they could react, they traveled to 1994, when John Connor was 10 years old. In the past 10 years, everything seems to have returned to its original point. During these 10 years, Kyle was approached by the police and imprisoned because of his previous battle with T-800. In the prison, he also caused riots due to riots. Dead inside. The difference is that Sarah Connor did not enter a mental hospital. Instead, she has been living with John Connor. However, because Sarah Connor has been talking about the end of the world, Skynet and the like, plus Sarah Connor was either training himself or practicing his marksmanship every day, which led to a bad relationship between the 2 mother and son, and they even quarreled every day. Until that day, Lee Qingyu and the others directly found the 2 of them. When they saw Lee Qingyu and the others, Sarah Connor was so frightened that she almost raised her gun and shot. Don't get excited, it's us. You forgot, we protected you before. Walter said quickly. Sarah Connor calmed down and said, since you have appeared, it means another Terminator has been sent, right? Yes, the Terminator coming this time is T-1000. He is far more terrifying than T-800, but it is also very easy to kill him. Now we need to find a steel mill. I know where it is. Where's John Connor? He is probably in the arcade now. Boss, the T-1000 has arrived, and there is also a T-800. Connor said. Can you find their location? Connor shook his head helplessly. In that case, Sarah Connor, lead the way. Lee Qingyu said. Sarah Connor nodded, then took out an assault rifle and shotgun from the room, handed the shotgun to Connor, and put the assault rifle in the back seat, and the two set off in a car. Li Qingyu and the others used the most common method used by GTA players, breaking the car window with one elbow, then opening the door, getting in, turning on the ignition and driving, all in one go. The two cars drove towards the game hall, and soon they arrived at the game hall. In order to find John Connor faster, several people separated. Unexpectedly, Richard was the first to find John Connor. "Are you John Connor?" Richard found the person in front and asked. "I am, who are you?" John Connor, who was only 10 years old, asked with a frown. At this time, Richard saw a policeman walking behind John Connor, but this policeman felt very bad for Richard. He immediately raised his gun and fired, and the bullet hit the policeman. As a result, the expected wound did not appear, but instead appeared. There are silvery white pits. "Come with me." Richard grabbed John Connor's hand and walked outside. The moment the gunfire rang out, the crowd began to run in panic. Richard and the two took this opportunity to run out. When John Connor was escaping, he also looked back and found the policeman who was recovering. Only then did he realize that the Terminator his mother said was true. However, because Richard was not familiar with the road, they ran into a dead end. "Why did you come here?" John Connor shouted. "I don't know the road either." Richard responded loudly. Seeing that the policeman was getting closer and closer, Richard could only slow down his pace by firing continuously. However, T-1000 is a liquid metal robot. He can continuously heal himself, so the damage caused by bullets can only slow him down. There is no way to kill him at this pace. Just when T-1000 was about 1 meter away from the two of them, a figure appeared. He grabbed T-1000 by the collar, threw it away, and said, "Follow me." He is. T-800 is just a modified program. He was sent by you in the future to protect you. Richard explained while asking John Connor to leave here quickly. The three of them got on the T-800 Kai and grabbed the car, and then Richard asked the T-800 Kai to drive the car to a steel mill. When T-1000 reacted, he also grabbed a car and gave chase. When Li Qingyu and others arrived and found that they had left, they didn't waste any time and drove after them. Steel mill. T-800 Kai brought John Connor and Richard inside, but they were stopped by workers as soon as they entered. T-800 Guy didn't waste any time, pointed his gun directly at them and said coldly, "Get out of here." The group of workers dropped their tools and fled without saying a word. At this time, T-1000 also rushed over. T-800 fired directly at T-1000. The bullets beat T-1000's body into pieces, but even so, it only takes a few seconds for T-1000 to completely heal the body. "Kill him by knocking him into the boiler," cried Richard. But as soon as he finished shouting, T-1000 immediately moved away from the boiler, but this did not mean that he had no means of long-range attack. He raised the pistol that had never fired a bullet and pointed it at John Connor. Upon seeing this, T-800 immediately came to him and blocked all the bullets. Not only that, he also ran towards T-1000. The two began to fight hand to hand, but T-1000's liquefaction ability was too abnormal. After a while, I changed the T-800 and couldn't find it. For this reason, Richard had no choice but to take action. If he didn't take action, he was really afraid that T-800 Kai would be killed. Richard quickly reloaded and then fired. The bullet staggered T-1000. T-800 Kai took this opportunity. He took action and knocked back the T-1000 with one punch after another. Just when Richard was about to run out of bullets, Li Qingyu and the others finally appeared. Li Qingyu kicked the T-1000 away and pushed it into the boiler. The high-temperature molten iron fused with T-1000, making it impossible for him to regain his human form. As more and more ordinary metals were fused, T-1000 was finally terminated. "Thanks to you all this time," Sarah Connor gasped. "Don't thank me. If you really want to prevent the birth of Skynet, go find Moss Dyson, because the body of the T-800 we killed for the first time was obtained by the government, thus creating Skynet from the inspiration in the chip. Net, so if you want to prevent the future, you must destroy the arms and chips in Moss Dyson's company. Another thing is that Skynet not only sent one T-800, but several, so don't thinking it's safe, let him stay to protect you mother and son." Li Qingyu pointed at T-800 Guy and said. After saying that, Li Qingyu and the others left. When Sarah Connor came to her senses, she ran out. She had many questions that she wanted to ask him, but when she ran outside, she did not see Lee Qingyu and the others. The cars they drove were still here. Sarah Connor looked around in confusion. She really didn't know how they disappeared. Because Lee Qingyu and the others had already returned to the office, they did not waste long this time. How is it? It's your first time to go to another world to carry out a commission. Lee Qingyu asked curiously. It's okay, I don't feel anything. Walter shrugged his shoulders and said. That's right, but don't worry. When you encounter the commission from other worlds, you should encounter all kinds of strange worlds, and your worldview will be refreshed in various ways. Then when will such a world appear? Walter asked. Are you asking me this? I don't know either. It depends on its mood. Lee Qingyu said helplessly. Richard and Walter looked at each other, shook their heads, and then went back to their homes. Lee Qingyu also sat on his boss chair again, but because Tom and Jerry were not here, the office seemed a little deserted in a rare case. Dividing line. On the other side, in Tony's seaside villa, Tony looked at Tom and Jerry in front of him with a depressed expression. He had tried various methods just now, but none of them could make them faint, including various anesthetics, but none of them could make them faint, as if they were completely immune to the drug. How's it going? Did Jarvis analyze anything? Sorry sir, according to my analysis, they are just ordinary cats and mice. Is this normal? Tony took the sword on the side and slashed at the two little ones. The two little ones ate like crazy without hiding. As a result, the sword split the two little ones into two, but the fracture soon disappeared. I'm sorry, sir, that's my analysis. Jarvis' helpless voice sounded. Who are you? Tony asked helplessly as he looked at the two of them. During this period, Tony tried many ways to kill them, such as hitting them with heavy objects, but they either had a big bump on their head and the pain subsided after a while, or they were smashed into a puddle, but this was even more outrageous, heavy objects you can recover the moment you leave. Or feed them poison, and they just open their mouths and spit out a puff of green smoke. There is a skull and two crossed bones in the smoke. That's fine. Of course, there are various ways to die. Not only that, but their every move constantly refreshed Tony's worldview, especially his actions that violated the rules of physics. For example, when he dropped them from a high altitude, they flapped their hands like birds, just like that. The land flew up. Also, when Tom chased Jerry, Jerry was obviously already in the air, but he refused to fall. It was not until he realized that he was in the air that Jerry fell. These scenes all impacted Tony. In the end, in order to protect his science, Tony had no choice but to send the two children back. So when Lee Qingyu saw Tony, he was really frightened. At this time, Tony's eyes were sunken, the dark circles were so heavy that even foundation couldn't cover them, and the stubble was so thick that it made people feel sick. What's wrong with you? Lee Qingyu asked in confusion. I can't understand, I really can't understand. Tony didn't explain, he just kept repeating this sentence. After leaving Tom and Jerry behind, he left quickly. What did you do to him? Lee Qingyu stared at Tom and Jerry. Twitter. After the two mistresses kept explaining, Lee Qingyu finally believed that Tony's appearance was not caused by them. Okay, now that I have brought it back to you, please stay safe and sound. If you dare to tear down the house again, all your dried fish and cheese will be confiscated. After leaving these cruel words, Lee Qingyu lay down on the boss's chair and fell asleep. Tom and Jerry continued their fight, but this time they were very careful in their fight and did not dare to make any noise at all. This caused the two little ones to attack each other, and if they wanted to scream in pain, they had to cover their mouths, or they would conjure up a glass bottle and put all the screams into it. Soon there were glass bottles all over the ground, filled with their screams. Gradually, they all got tired, and Jerry had to stop and raise the white flag to show his surrender. Seeing this, Tom stopped chasing Jerry. The two children returned to their sofa and collapsed directly. Above it, it slowly flowed down like liquid. Hell's Kitchen. Richard stayed in his room. At this time, Richard was drawing out the methods of training gun fighting in his mind bit by bit, because it involved a lot of data science, statistics, geometry, various gun skills, and fighting. Martial arts and swordsmanship, etc. The amount of knowledge involved is beyond what Richard can sort out by himself. After all, he is just a child. Even if he has all the knowledge of gunfighting in his mind, he cannot fully display it. It's like a child who has never read a book. He knows a way to cultivate immortality. After others know about it, they want this child to teach him, but that child has never studied and cannot read at all. He doesn't know how to do it. He could only teach them orally, such as how to absorb spiritual energy. From here to here, he couldn't even tell the meridians. Richard is in such a situation today. He wants to record the complete gunfighting skills, but his knowledge reserve does not support him. For this reason, he can only ask Walter for a can of improved NZT. For this thing, he believed that he could learn the knowledge required for gunfighting in a very short period of time. But for a child, it is too boring and difficult. After all, an ordinary person would never dare to say that he has completely learned a subject, let alone the gunfighting skills involved. Seeing that his brain was about to explode, Richard had to find Walt for help. After learning about Richard's needs, Walter directly gave him Gaia's help. With Gaia's help, Richard spent only a few days recording the gunfighting training methods. In fact, Richard didn't want to ask for Walter's help, because he wanted to give this method to Kingpin, so he wanted to complete it alone, but he thought too highly of himself, so he had no choice but to ask Walter for help. Of course, Richard was not without gains. He learned geometry, spearmanship, fighting skills and swordsmanship. After all, these are the things that are most likely to be learned quickly in a short period of time. Taking this USB flash drive, Richard came to the Wilson building and entered Jin Bin's office under the leadership of a security guard. "Happy birthday, Dad, this is my birthday gift to you." Richard handed the USB flash drive to Jin Bin, who took it and asked curiously, "What's in it?" "Dad, won't you know if you open it yourself and take a look?" Jin Bian inserted the USB flash drive into the computer, then clicked on the folder inside. First, he clicked on the video. From the video, he saw the effect of gunfighting and the systematic training method. "Is this true?" Kingpin asked in surprise. "Dad, it's true, I know how to fight with guns." "Can you show me?" "Then Dad will find some people, and then some BB bullets and a gun. But the gun should be smaller. My hands can't hold a larger gun." Kingpin nodded, and then spoke to his butler. After a while, 7 people in black suits walked in. Each of them had a pistol. The leader handed Richard 2 miniature pistols. Richard took it and quickly checked whether there was any problem with the gun. Then he checked the ammunition and confirmed that it was BB bullets. He said, "You deal with me according to your daily training. Treat me as a mission target. When the bell rings, shoot directly, don't hesitate." "Yes, young master." Several people responded, and then surrounded Richard in a semicircle, waiting for the bell to ring. Kingpin also glanced at the clock on the side. As the 3 needles overlapped, the bell rang. Richard took the lead in moving, dodging bullets and counter-attacking with an elegant movement. Sometimes he didn't even need to look at the enemy. Shot directly. 5 seconds later, the 7 people looked at Richard in disbelief. Their bodies were covered with marks from BB bullets of different colors, but Richard's body was clean and had nothing on it. "Dad, as you can see, gunfighting is so easy to use, but this gun still doesn't work. Their rate of fire is still too slow. It should be faster, so that it can be more suitable for gunfighting." "I know, Richard, I like your gift very much. With this, my empire can continue to expand," Kingpin said with a rare smile. "Then I'll leave. I won't disturb your work. Remember to come back early in the evening. Mom has also prepared a gift for you." The Kingpin nodded, and Richard left the Wilson building. Kingpin stood by the window, looking at Richard's leaving figure at the bottom of the building, and couldn't help but smile. Form a special team and train them according to this training method. Remember that they don't have to be the strongest, but they must be loyal enough. Do you understand? Kingpin said with his back to the butler. "Yes, sir." The butler bowed slightly, then took away the USB flash drive. After Richard returned to the villa, he spoke to Vanessa and then ran to the office. "Teacher, today is my dad's birthday. Remember to come over to the party tonight." "Is anyone coming?" Li Qingyu asked with a yawn. "Just the people in our office, my parents, or the butler uncle and Bullseye. After all, you know that my dad has a special status, so there won't be many people attending the birthday party. They are all familiar people. In this case, just remember to tell me when the banquet starts. By the way, let's inform Walter." Li Qingyu waved his hand. I understand, teacher. Soon it was evening. After Vanessa prepared the food for tonight's party, Richard hurriedly ran to notify Li Qingyu and the others. As Li Qingyu and the others entered the garden of the villa, Jin Bing also came back, followed only by Bullseye and his housekeeper. After a few people greeted each other, Vanessa sang happy birthday with everyone, and then as Vanessa watched, Kim cut the cake open. Everyone seemed to be an ordinary family having a birthday party, and their original identities were completely invisible. Suddenly Connor felt something, came behind Kingpin and said calmly, "The uninvited guest is here." Kingpin froze for a moment, then handed the cut cake to Connor. At the same time, he looked outside and saw a car appearing outside the street. On a nearby tall building, a group of ninjas were hiding in the darkness. "Do you need me to do something?" Bullseye asked as he ate the beef on the toothpick. "No, they don't dare to cause trouble at this time. Let's wait until the party is over," Kingpin said softly, while pouring a glass of wine for several people. Everyone present, except Vanessa, basically felt the group of ninjas outside, but they didn't expose it. Everyone was sitting in the garden, chatting, eating delicious food, drinking wine, and enjoying themselves very comfortably. Until about 11 o'clock in the evening, Vanessa felt sleepy, yawned and said, "Yawn, honey, I'm sleepy, go back to bed first, leave these in the garden, I will clean them up tomorrow morning." After speaking, Vanessa kissed Kingpin, then patted Richard on the head as she passed him and went upstairs. As soon as Vanessa left, everyone's momentum suddenly changed. Li Qingyu said to Jin Bing, "If you need anything, just come to us, as long as the price is right." After saying that, Li Qingyu took his employees, except Richard, and left. After they left, the car slowly arrived at the door of the villa, and an old woman with an Asian face stepped out of it. She came to the door gracefully with a cane in her hand. "Kingpin, am I not welcome to come in?" "Mrs. Gao, what are you doing here?" Jin Bing looked at Mrs. Gao expressionlessly and said coldly. "Mrs. Gao, what do you want to do?" Kingpin asked, sitting in his yard, looking at Mrs. Gao expressionlessly. "Kingpin, that woman just now was your wife." When Kingpin heard what Mrs. Gao said, his eyes became sharp. Richard even shot directly, but the bullet was blocked by the ninja wearing a blue ninja uniform next to Mrs. Gao. "Be careful what you say. If you dare to attack my mother, I won't do anything. I will just stare at you every day," Richard said with a dark face. When the blue ninja in front of Mrs. Gao heard this, she immediately became unhappy and rushed towards Richard. When Richard saw this, he didn't talk nonsense. Luo Liafeng can even stabilize the blue ninja. Seeing this, Mrs. Gao quickly said, "That's enough, I have no ill intentions, I just came to discuss a business with you." "You don't have any ill intentions. If you don't have any ill intentions, you shouldn't be here." Kingpin finally stood up, and his huge body brought unparalleled pressure. "Time is urgent and I have no choice, but I can guarantee that I really don't have any ill intentions towards her." "I don't believe your guarantee," Kingpin said coldly. Mrs. Gao said one word helplessly. "Keel." After hearing this, Kingpin's eyes lit up, and he immediately said to Richard, "Richard, go back to bed. You have to go to school tomorrow." "Dad, believe me, they won't mess around. Even if they do, there will still be Boss Lee and the others next to them." When Richard saw this, he could only reluctantly put away his gun and turned around and left. Then Kingpin ordered Bullseye to ask someone to clean up the place, and then Kingpin left with Mrs. Gao. Richard looked at the people leaving through the window and couldn't help snorting. Mrs. Gao obviously felt this and looked back at Richard with a proud smile on her lips. This made Richard angry. "I almost pulled out a gun in her on the spot." At the same time, on the other side, a hammer-like meteorite suddenly fell in Mexico. This meteorite looked small, but it was very heavy. How heavy it was! The people who discovered the meteorite tried various methods but couldn't shake this meteorite a little. Then the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. discovered the meteorite and directly dispatched troops to build a temporary base around the meteorite. However, they were also unable to shake the meteorite in front of them, and their machines were unable to detect what it was made of. S.H.I.E.L.D. had no choice but to seek foreign aid, and the first was Tony. After Tony learned that an unknown meteorite had landed on the Earth, Tony set out immediately, but even he couldn't detect what material the thing was made of. Jarvis could only detect that the meteorite contained terrible strength. After seeing Tony, they had no way of knowing the origin of the meteorite, so they had no choice but to seek help from Li Qingyu. I hope that this information dealer who claims to know everything can know the origin of this meteorite. So when Li Qingyu's office just opened, Natasha appeared at the door. Yawn, what's the matter? Knock on the door so early. Li Qingyu said with a yawn. Are you still selling information now? Natasha asked. It's for sale, but what's different from before is that you need to ask questions in the form of a commission, and each question costs $100,000, no bargaining. Good. Upon seeing this, Li Qingyu quickly invited Natasha in and placed the parchment scroll on the table. After Natasha went through the process, she took out the picture of the meteorite and asked, "What is this?" Li Qingyu saw the meteorite in the picture and replied directly, "Thor's hammer, Mjolnir." Thor's hammer. Are you sure you're not kidding me? No kidding, the question has been answered, please pay. Natasha gave Li Qingyu a check with a dark face, then she took the parchment scroll on the table and went through the process again in annoyance. Tell me how this Thor's hammer was made. Natasha thought for a while before asking. After hearing this, Li Qingyu couldn't help but praise, she is indeed a Black Widow. She is really smart. In this case, I will tell you. The hammerhead part of Thor's hammer was forged in a star that is about to decline, while the handle part is made of wood from the world tree. The person who made it was the Dwarf King on Nadav. Not only that, there is also Odin's spell bonus on Mjolnir, which makes it impossible for anyone who is not recognized by Mjolnir to lift it. Is there anything else you want to ask now? After getting the information she needed, Natasha threw down the check, turned around and left quickly. While leaving, she quickly turned on her cell phone to contact Coulson in Mexico and informed him of the origin of Thor's hammer. At the same time, she combined herself with some information from Norse mythology, and she guessed whether Thor, the god of thunder, would also land nearby with Thor's hammer. With the information provided by Natasha, Coulson quickly found out about the strangers who had recently appeared in the town. There were only 4 people in total. 2 men and 2 women, namely Jane Foster, Eric Chavig, Daisy Louise and a blonde man who could not find any information. By comparing the face, this blonde man has not appeared anywhere in the world. He seems to have appeared suddenly. The date of birth and age are unknown, so Coulson has reason to think that he is Thor, the god of thunder, but he does not knowing what happened to him, it actually caused him to become an ordinary person now. For this reason, when Coulson learned that the blonde man had attacked the base, he directly informed all the members and let him in. But when the blonde man entered and held Mjolnir tightly, what no one expected was that Mjolnir actually not being lifted up by the man. Coulson frowned at the scene. After a while, Coulson finally ordered, "Drive him away." "Yes, sir." Immediately, everyone swarmed up and drove the blonde man away. At this time, a scientific researcher came to Coulson and whispered, "Sir, that person's identity may really be Thor, the god of thunder who just touched the god of thunder. When hammering, the energy inside it reached its peak, but I don't know why the energy suddenly weakened and finally became calm. Can you find the reason?" The scientific researcher shook his head, and Coulson immediately asked him to leave. At this time, Coulson thought of the information provided by Natasha. He stood in the room and looked at Thor's hammer in the yard and murmured, "There is no such thing as Thor's hammer. No one recognized by the hammer can lift it. Did Odin abandon Thor? This is impossible. Why exactly? Is he really the god of thunder?" In a border town in Mexico, a blonde man sat in a car with a sad expression. In addition to him, there were 2 women and an old man in the car. "Jane, I think he seems to be stupid, why don't we just leave him here?" A woman whispered in another woman's ear. Daisy, okay, doctor, can we go eat first? I'm hungry." "Okay, let's go eat first." At this time, the woman named Jane was still comforting the man sitting in the passenger seat, but the man seemed unable to listen to anything and still looked sad. When he arrived outside the restaurant, the man seemed to smell the food, and then he said, "Are you going to eat?" "Ouch, you finally spoke, we thought you were really stupid." Daisy complained. Daisy shrugged her shoulders, and Jane quickly walked to the man's side and whispered, "Yes, let's go eat first, and then we'll talk about you after the meal." "My business." Jane nodded, then took them in, each ordered a set meal, and after they had eaten and drank enough, they returned to the house. "May I have your name?" "Thor Odinson." The man answered truthfully. "Thor Odinson. You don't want to say that you are Thor, do you?" "I used to be the god of thunder, but now my identity is just an ordinary Asgardian." At this point, Thor drooped his head sadly. "You are really the god of thunder." Jane was a little surprised. Then several people chatted about the situation in Asgard and Thor's age. However, when they learned that Thor was more than 2,000 years old, the three of them were surprised. However, thinking of myths, it feels somewhat normal. Little did they know that while they were chatting, a colorful light appeared outside the town, and 4 people walked out of the light. They were dressed in medieval armor and walked toward the town with cold weapons in hand. Their appearance also alarmed Coulson and the others. "Hawkeye, lead a team and see what's going on." A figure in the tree jumped down, nodded, and then led a heavily armed team towards the town. Thor, who was originally planning to take a rest, suddenly heard the commotion outside. He looked through the window in confusion and suddenly spotted a familiar person. He rushed out and grabbed the person, but unexpectedly his hand passed directly over the body of. "My dear brother, do you know what you have done? Loki, help me." Loki shook his head, and then told Thor the information that Odin died because of being too angry. When Thor learned that Odin had died early because of his own problems, he sat on the ground in despair, but the next person who appeared interrupted his plan. "Thor, don't believe Loki, he is lying to you. The God King just entered a deep sleep state. He is fine." A fat man shouted loudly. "Vostag, why are you here?" Loki looked at them with contempt, then disappeared. Then the 4 people came to Thor and explained the whole story clearly. It turned out that Loki obtained the eternal spear while Odin was sleeping, and sat on it. He knew the location of the God King and wanted to use the Rainbow Bridge to destroy it. Thor was furious after hearing these, and was about to summon Thor's hammer to stop Loki's plan, but then he remembered that he seemed unable to summon Thor's hammer. At this moment, the Rainbow Bridge appeared again not far away, but this time it was not Odin, Frigga, or Loki, but Odin's armor destroyer, but the person controlling the destroyer was Loki. Base. "Loki, don't make the same mistake again and again," Thor shouted. But Loki controlled the destroyer, stood up straight and looked at the 5 people in front of him. Suddenly his mask opened and an orange laser shot at them. The 5 people hurriedly avoided and used their weapons to attack the destroyer. But unfortunately, the attacks of several people could not cause any harm to Doomsday. Even after the team led by Hawkeye arrived, they could not help at all. Seeing that his friend was about to be killed, Thor immediately blocked the path of Doomsday. "Loki, I know you hate me. If killing me will help you let them go, then go ahead." After Loki heard this, the controller Doomsday stopped in front of Thor. Looking at the stopped Doomsday, Thor thought Loki was missing his old feelings, but the next second Loki slapped Thor away. Thor directly smashed into the wall, and his body was covered by bricks and stones. Only one arm was exposed. Seeing this, Jane ran over quickly, grabbed Thor's hand and shouted loudly, "Thor, no! Thor, wake up!" But no matter how she called, there was still no movement from Thor. Even the 3 warriors of Asgard and Sif looked helplessly ahead. At this moment, Jane suddenly felt her fingers go numb, and subconsciously let go of her hand, discovering that a small arc of electricity appeared on her palm, and she stood up in surprise. Everyone also felt something and immediately looked at Thor. The next second, the sound of breaking through the air was heard. Everyone looked towards the sky, and a bolt of lightning rushed towards Thor. Thor burst out with a powerful momentum, and the bricks and stones on his body were blown away. Then a scale-like armor and a cloak appeared on his body, and multiple thunder and lightning struck him, but this thunder and lightning was to replenish the vacancy in Thor's body, of divine power. Upon seeing this, Loki immediately controlled the destroyer to attack Thor, but Thor, who had regained his divine power, shattered the destroyer with just one blow. Looking at the fragments on the ground, Thor ignored them and came to Jane's in front of him. He hugged her. After a while, Thor let go of Jane and whispered, "Jane, I need Asgard to deal with Loki, wait until I come back, okay?" "Okay, go and come back quickly." Thor nodded, and then took the 3 warriors of Asgard and Sif to the wild, and began to call Heimdall, because Heimdall was responsible for opening the Rainbow Bridge, but no matter how they shouted, the Rainbow Bridge did not respond. Thor seemed to know that something had happened to Heimdall, but now only Heimdall or Odin could open the Rainbow Bridge. Heimdall, I know you can see it. You must open the Rainbow Bridge, otherwise no one can stop Loki. Thor roared. The next second the Rainbow Bridge appeared and enveloped the 5 people. When the Rainbow Bridge disappeared, the 5 people also disappeared. After that, no one knew what happened in Asgard. Coulson and the others also packed up and prepared to leave. Only Jane looked at the starry sky, not knowing what she was thinking. For S.H.I.E.L.D., Director Fury immediately felt an inexplicable sense of panic after learning that Norse mythology was not a myth, especially when a living god appeared in front of him. After all, the only information available proves that Thor alone can easily destroy a country, let alone the god King Odin and a large number of Asgardian soldiers above him. And according to the known information, Asgard's technology is far more powerful than theirs, so once Asgard invades the Earth, the chance of the Earth winning is 0. Such a sense of crisis makes him have to start researching countermeasures. Director Fury was indeed the king of agents, and he quickly thought of a way. Since their existing technology cannot compete with Asgard, he will use some products that are not from the Earth to develop a powerful weapon. This weapon must be so powerful that it can easily destroy a planet or a planet. The galaxy is equivalent to a nuclear threat on the Earth. With this weapon, not to mention colonizing aliens, at least self-protection will be no problem. But where to start? Director Fury was in trouble again. At this time, Coulson ran over and reported Captain America's situation. Upon hearing the word Captain America, Director Fury had a flash of inspiration and remembered that the laser weapons that had caused so much suffering to their allies in World War II were developed using a mysterious object called the Cosmic Cube. With the technology of the World War II period, it was possible to develop laser weapons that were decades ahead of the rest of the world. With their current technology, wouldn't it be possible to develop a powerful weapon from it? Thinking of this, Director Fury immediately ordered his men to secretly study the Cosmic Cube. At the same time, Fury called in Dr. Eric Shavig, who had a good understanding of cosmic magic and knew the existence of S.H.I.E.L.D. Although Dr. Eric Shavig was very reluctant, studying the Cosmic Cube was also one of his wishes, so he could only say goodbye to Jane and Daisy, and entered one of S.H.I.E.L.D's secret bases to start studying the universe. Here comes the Rubik's Cube. However, Director Fury felt that something was wrong. In order to find ways to enhance the strength of the Earth, he had to launch a plan called the Avengers. Director Fury was sitting in his office, holding a folder called Avengers List in his hand. Several names appeared in it, but he had crossed out all of them. There is only one left, and that is Captain America Steve Rogers. He rose up in World War II and was injected with the super soldier serum. His character is not to mention, so when he started this plan, Steve Rogers was the first member. The person below him was Lee Ching-yu, but his name was crossed out. It seemed that Director Fury knew that wanting Lee Ching-yu to join his plan was undoubtedly wishful thinking, so he crossed out his name. Next up is Tony. However, although Tony's personality has changed, he still looks carefree, so Director Fury tentatively decided to let him join. If he wants to really let him join, he must pass some tests. Next came Clint Barton, Hawkeye, Natasha Black Widow, and Agent Coulson. However, he thought about it for a long time and finally crossed out Coulson's name. After all, Coulson was the best at it. That's diplomacy, not suitable for fighting. There are a few more unfamiliar ones behind, such as Frank Castle, Banner Bruce, Daniel Thomas Rand K., Luke Cage and so on. The names of these people have also been crossed out, because they are either too young and unable to take on big responsibilities for the time being, or they are unstable. For example, Banner Bruce's ability is extremely unstable, and if he is not careful, he may even be injured, to one's own people. Of course, there is also a killer among them, that is Frank Custer. He is the famous Punisher. He is an anti-hero. If he joins the Avengers, he will probably be like Steve Rogers. There was a conflict of ideas, so he couldn't join, so they were deleted, and the final list only had 3 people. Steve Rogers, Captain America, Clint Barton, Hawkeye, Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow. After deciding on the candidate, Director Fury directly found Steve Rogers. In a certain boxing gym in Washington, this place has been closed, but it was bought by Steve Rogers and used as a place to vent. After all, for Steve Rogers, he just slept and woke up. It has been 70 years since he discovered that the world has changed, and he has also missed the most important dance. All of this makes Steve Rogers irritable. As a sandbag was knocked out, Steve Rogers didn't say anything. He directly picked up a new sandbag and hung it up. He continued to hit. As one punch was bigger than the other, with only 10 punches, the sandbag was knocked out again. It flew away. What's wrong? You don't seem to have adapted yet. How did you come? Come to recruit your veteran, Director Fury said. I'm done. Now I just want to live the normal life I once wanted to live. Steve Rogers said without looking back. Someone wants to see you. Director Fury sighed. Only then did Steve Rogers turn around. He didn't know who wanted to see him. Suddenly he thought of something and became silent. Following Director Fury, he silently arrived at the medical department of the three-wing building and opened the door. In a VIP room, there was a gray-haired old man lying in it. When Steve Rogers saw the old man's vicissitudes of life, he held back tears and lowered his head. He quietly sat on a chair nearby and looked at the photos on the table. You're here, Steve. The old man slowly opened her eyes, but when she saw Steve Rogers, she subconsciously wanted to hide her face, but due to physical reasons, she remained motionless in the end. Yes, I'm here, Paige, you should be proud of yourself. Yes, the old man is Peggy Carter, one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Steve Rogers' former girlfriend. At this time, Peggy Carter also noticed Steve Rogers' line of sight. She followed it and found that he was looking at photos of her family and said, I have lived a lifetime, and the only regret is that you did not live your life. After hearing this, Steve Rogers slowly lowered his head. Peggy Carter smiled slightly and asked, what's wrong? My principle has always been to do the right thing, but now I seem to have no idea what is right. In fact, I have thought about returning to the army, obeying orders, and defending the country, but everything is happening now compared to when I joined the army. It's no longer the same. After listening to Steve Rogers' words, Peggy Carter couldn't help but laugh. You are still the same as before, always talking so exaggeratedly. You saved the world, and we made it all a mess. Don't talk nonsense. The big reason why I haven't completely returned to ordinary life is because I know that you founded S.H.I.E.L.D. Peggy Carter grabbed Steve Rogers' hand, put it on her stomach, and held it with her hand. The world has changed, but we can't go back. We can only do our best, and sometimes, the best option is to start over. After saying this, Peggy Carter started to cough. Steve Rogers quickly brought a glass of water and fed it to her, but when Peggy Carter drank the water, her expression changed. She became aggrieved and her expression was not as stable as before. Steve, it's me. You're still alive, you're back, long time no see, long time. Peggy Carter said with a cry. How could I leave my lover? I still owe her a dance. Steve Rogers said quickly. Then the two chatted for a while until the doctor came in and said that Peggy Carter needed to rest. Steve Rogers then closed his mouth and held Peggy Carter's hand to accompany her to sleep. After chatting with Peggy Carter, Steve found Director Fury. I agree with your plan, now can I know who my teammates are? Well, plus you, there are only 3 people in the Avengers today. 2 of them are agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. One is called Hawkeye and the other is called Black Widow. They are here. Just as Director Fury finished speaking, a man and a woman walked in from the outside. Looking at them, Steve nodded to them. The 2 of them also shouted to Steve, Hello, Captain, welcome, return. Are there any suitable candidates? After all, there are only 3 people, which is too few. Steve couldn't help but said. How do you know I have candidates here? Here is a list of them. You can see if you can recruit them. If you can, of course it will be great. If not, forget it. This can be considered your first mission. Fury the director handed a folder to Steve. Steve nodded, and then the 3 of them took the Quinjet to the S.H.I.E.L.D. branch in New York, where they picked up a car, opened the folder, and went to find the first candidate. The first candidate turned out to be the Punisher, whom Director Fury thought was unsuitable. I don't know why, but he still put the Punisher as the first person. It seemed that Director Fury wanted to win over this former comrade. But when Steve and the others came to the door, they were turned down. They had no choice but to wait outside. They waited all day but did not see the Punisher coming out. Just when they were about to leave, I noticed a figure walking out quickly, got into a car and left. When they saw this, they immediately followed. The three of them are not ordinary people. They have all received professional training, so even the Punisher cannot detect them when they are followed. Even if the Punisher feels that someone is following them, he just can't find the three of them, and then he no longer cares about it. Instead, today's massacre began. The three of them witnessed with their own eyes how the Punisher quickly dealt with an entire gang. Even if he accidentally killed an ordinary person, the Punisher only glanced at them, then took the money and left. A fire was set and all traces were removed. Seeing how bloodthirsty he was, Steve shook his head, crossed out his name, and then they came to Marvel Studios. Because it was already dark, Li Qingyu and the others were having dinner at this time. When he saw the three people who suddenly came to the door, Li Qingyu's eyes lit up and he asked, "You three, do you have a commission? Are you Ed Li, the owner of this firm?" "Yes, it's me, what's wrong?" Li Qingyu asked after swallowing the food in his mouth. "We'd like to invite you to join the Avengers." "TCH, I thought you were going to bring me business, but who knew you were actually trying to recruit me?" "Leave now." Li Qingyu tried to drive away a few people angrily, but suddenly a new commission appeared on the bulletin board. Several people saw this and didn't bother to pay attention to the three people. They went directly to the bulletin board and found that the commission was very simple. It was to enter Anaconda 2 to help the group of scientific researchers obtain the blood orchid and ensure that everyone survived. You can get 500 points by completing the commission, and each person who survives will gain 100 points, and you can also get blood orchid planting technology. "Boss, what kind of world is this?" Walter asked. "You take Connor with you to this world. This world is not suitable for observation. At the same time, I will tell you about what will happen in this world and the enemies you will face." Then Li Qingyu told the general plot of this world in front of Steve and the other three. After hearing this, Walter quickly asked Gaia to make some powerful snake repellent. When everything was ready, Connor put his hand on Walter's shoulder, and then he tore off the parchment scroll on the bulletin board, and the two of them suddenly disappeared into a stream of light. Such a turn of events made Steve and the others slightly shocked, but they still suppressed the throbbing in their hearts and looked at the scene in front of them. At this time, Li Qingyu discovered that Steve and the others were still here, and asked them to leave again. "Do I want some information, or $100,000? Natasha asked. Yes, guests please come in." After Natasha went through the process, she asked her question. "I want to know, did your staff just go to another world to handle a commission?" "That's right." After getting the information she wanted, Natasha handed a check to Li Qingyu, and then Natasha said to Steve, "Captain, you continue to look for your teammates. I need to go back and report the situation." Steve nodded. After these days of tutoring, he already knew what Li Qingyu said was equivalent, so he did not refuse. Natasha quickly returned to the New York branch and contacted Director Fury to share the known information. After learning that Li Qingyu had the ability to send people to other worlds, his eyes changed. "I understand, you continue to look for suitable people to join the Avengers." But the two of them didn't know that Hydra, hidden in S.H.I.E.L.D., also obtained this information immediately. Alexander Pierce, the Minister of the World Security Council and the leader of the smugglers hiding within Hydra, immediately mobilized a rapid response special force from the New York branch to Marvel Studios. The entire team was made up of Hydra members, a member of. They received an order to capture Li Qingyu alive and pry out from his mouth the method of traveling to other worlds. If they could not pry it out on the spot, they would capture him in the Hydra base. But in a bank vault in Washington, a group of people were sitting quietly together. "Snakehead, don't you know Ed Li's strength? There is no way a quick reaction special force can be his opponent." "I know, so I arranged for the Winter Soldier and the Centipede Warrior to go together, and the Rapid Response Special Forces are just a stepping stone. Their sacrifice is worth it, hail Hydra." After hearing this, others stood up and shouted, "Hail Hydra." But now Li Qingyu didn't know that he had been targeted. When he closed the door and was about to take a rest, a circle of sparks suddenly appeared and Constantine walked out. "Boss, I'm back." "Hey, why are you back so free today?" Li Qingyu said in a strange tone. "Boss, didn't you ask me to learn magic?" Why are you so evil? Constantine said angrily. I'm used to it. By the way, why are you coming back? Well, I have read all the books and learned all the magic, so Master Ancient One drove me back. Didn't she let you inherit the position of Supreme Mage? No, she said that this position has been reserved, even if my talent is stronger than his. Okay, now that you're back, get ready. It's time for you to take on the commission. Now go back and rest. Constantine nodded and returned to his room. Unexpectedly, several cars had already parked at the door of the office. Thanks for watching.